FreeManCast.
Hello and welcome to an on-location edition of the FreeManCast. I am Josh Friedman, coming to you today from Sofia, Bulgaria, where I've returned slightly heartbroken to find something missing. I am standing in the center of Sofia at the National Palace of Culture complex, overlooking or staring at what used to be a monument, and I'm now going to bring in my co-host Brent Sanders. How you doing, Brent?
I'm good, Josh. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you, Brent. So I'm bringing you in now to explain what the heck was here for the past few decades or so.
Well, I guess it was built in 1981, and it commemorated the 1300 years anniversary of Bulgaria. So, whereas America celebrated 1976 as the 200 year, they had 1,100 years ahead of us, more or less. And so that monument was also a communist. It was built by the communists in 81. Of course, this was still a communist country. And but whether it was beautiful or not, a lot of people argue over that.
Well, what did it look like?
Well, it looked like, I don't know, a twisted piece of metal sticking out of the ground, sort of.
I'll describe it a little bit because
We'll put on the picture, right?
Yeah, we're cropping in the photos of this 1300 years monument, which had a pretty interesting nickname, which we'll try to discuss in a minute as well. Anyway, I would describe it as extremely jagged and terribly dull in appearance, and just so strikingly ugly that it was actually fascinating to me. When I arrived in Bulgaria, I just kind of marveled at how there could be such an ugly structure, such an ugly monument right in
I just remembered that it used to have an inscription too, and the inscription translated roughly, if I remember correctly, is "We are in time, and time is in us." How's that for a catchy phrase? Sorry to interrupt.
Maybe it didn't catch my attention. I don't know.
It used to have it
I
on
don't
the
know how
side,
catchy
but-
it was.
See, the whole monument was falling apart. You know this, Josh. The whole monument has been falling apart even since I arrived in 1991.
So this monument was built in 81 and unveiled, we believe, in 82. So it was only, what, 10 years old or less when you arrived. Yet it was.
I would make it 9 years old, and it was falling apart back then. It was ugly too. But I mean, all of Sofia was ugly. I'm sorry. And Vitushka, which we will walk down later,
Possibly.
I think that's what we may do. Is just, it looks completely different. But so does this whole park and everything. I mean, you can call this Euro funds because it is coming from the EC or the EU. But
Well, I would say that there's, from what I understand, EU money getting piped in here, but just over the 3 years that I've been here, this Endika, or National Palace of Culture complex, looks far better than when I arrived. There's a beautification process ongoing, and it looks way better. There's a fountain. What about that fountain?
Well, the fountain didn't work, you said, when you came, and I've been saying it hasn't been working most of the time that I've been here, 26 years.
So I guess I didn't even realize that it was a fountain, but it's been there for decades.
It's
or
always
how
been
long?
a fountain, but they didn't fix it, especially the one, see, there's one downstairs right in front of Endika, National Palace of Culture.
I'm giving a brief shot, so I'll crop in more photos.
Down in front of that white part of the building that you see.
So there's the
a
Palace of
fountain.
Culture. All right.
And that fountain was the first one maybe to be renovated here in Bulgaria after the fall of communism. So, but it wasn't working the whole time either, and it would work, and then it would work for a couple of years, and then it would not work, and then they'd fix it. Same thing with this other one, which runs down the whole length of the front. It has been not working, on and off the whole time that I've been here. But since we're on the question of fountains, we might mention the one. It's getting a little bit loud here, so I'll wait for a second.
It's family time, Friday evening at
Absolutely, Friday.
Indica.
So there is a fountain, and it's boarded up. It's right in front of McDonald's. Have you ever seen that boarded up fixture in front of McDonald's?
Which McDonald's?
The one over on Slovakia Square where they sell the books.
I've walked by there a bunch of times. I know I've seen it, but I can't picture it at the moment.
So they built it. There didn't used to be a fountain there, and they built it. The city of Sofia built it. But then somebody got electrocuted and killed in it, so that's why it's boarded up. They haven't ever fixed it since then. So fountains and parks and stuff, this is kind of an ongoing theme in Bulgaria, not being renovated.
Just this afternoon, I was sitting speaking of fountains and parks, I was sitting at the park by the National Theatre, where there is a fountain, quite attractive fountain.
Yes.
And
it's been there for years. But it also didn't work for
me. Three little kids jumped, or rather dove in there. I was almost shocked when I saw them diving. It's not very deep, maybe like 1 foot.
Not at all.
Anyway, and they're swimming around there, and then some security guy, or actually I think he had a city water department or some shirt like that on, comes charging up to them, trying to scare them and screaming at them and chasing them off. I think they were gypsy kids, but
probably.
Anyway,
and they were probably pulling out coins, which is that's fairly common here in Bulgaria, for them to pull the coins out of the fountains.
I have seen that elsewhere in Eastern Europe. Anyway, as we wrap up really quickly on this incredibly ugly piece of art that's now gone. Yes. It had a secretive nickname that most people, I guess, had never heard.
I think we just asked a security guard here, and I think he might have been a little bit embarrassed, or maybe even he was worried that if this got out, that he knew the word, that he would be fired or something. I don't know, but he's claimed to not know it. He said, yeah, it exists. But I think the best translation that I can come up with is something like 7-angled, 5-dicked, but that's a little bit difficult to understand. The dicks would be raised because what they call the pentagram, the star, the 5 rayed. So it was shaped a little bit like the 3D star in a sense. It sort of had some of those angles, and I think that's why they called it the 7-angled, 5-rayed, but 5-dicked, because 5-dicked or 5-cocked, because they like rude words in Bulgaria.
Well, I personally find that nickname fitting because
it sort of looked like it.
It was. Anyway, you've seen what it looks like now. Enough said.
So I'm gonna
maybe I'll shed 1 tear max that it's gone, but
let me try to get Josh to say this word. So sedmo ugolno.
Sedmo ugolno.
Ugolno.
Sedmo ugolno.
Close. Petohuinik.
Petohuinik.
Yeah, very good. So that's what it used to be called.
Tova nogo trudno. I said that is very difficult. All right. Enough of all the nonsense. This week was a milestone for you, Brent.
Oh yes, it was my 50th birthday, my 50th jubilee. Yeah, actually last year I was here for. See, I came when I was 24, so I've been here for 26 years now. Last year I had been in Bulgaria for in Bulgaria for more of my life than I had been in America, and this year I completed 50 years, so yes.
Okay, well, let's hit that note, but before we do, happy birthday again, by the way.
Thank you very much, thank you.
Let's
And thank all of you.
Let's move this
In advance.
conversation over to another location where
Yes.
you could possibly get a drink to discuss the matter.
Yeah, we're going to say cheers over my birthday again.
All right.
And I'm going to treat you.
Okay, here we go.
This is a Bulgarian tradition, so.
Welcome back to the FreeManCast. Brent, where are we now?
Right now we're on Vitosha Boulevard, otherwise familiarly known as Vitoshka.
And you were saying that you've now spent more than half of your life in Bulgaria. And I really would like to get your take on what Vitoshka looks like now compared to what it did previously, which I'm sure was an entirely different world, or so it seemed. But before we get into that, I got a question for you. Do you regret having spent so much time in Bulgaria? Are you grateful you've spent so much of your life in Bulgaria?
I'm very grateful, actually. I mean, I feel like I've learned a lot about myself and about other people. From living here for so long, I've learned a lot about Bulgaria, of course. I mean, Europe, history, lots of stuff. I've learned a lot. But yeah, I mean, I sort of jokingly say to my friends that I'm glad that I escaped America 26 years ago, because I don't really like the way things are looking there now. So I feel like I was a few steps ahead of the crowd.
Well, so you were here in the 1990s, or at least most of the decade, right?
Yeah, I arrived in 91.
That was quite a turbulent time here, was it not?
Well, yes. I mean, I think I understand what they mean when they say societal breakdown now, because it's like when nobody has, well, when few people have jobs, and when few people have anything to believe in, and when everything that they've, let's say, invested their belief system into for 45 years, when it goes poof, people sort of freak out. So, I mean, I'm even saying this is even before there were the what do they call them? The petty mafia. I mean, the mafia came later in the 90s, probably let's say 95, 96. But yeah, for the first few years, it was pretty chaotic.
So what were some of the things that you saw living in Bulgaria in the first half of the 1990s?
Well, it would be, for example, like when I would be walking home at night, we would go to a bar or something, we'd go out, and I would walk home. This was in Dobrich, different city. But that's a good example. Well, you know, the countryside is a little bit, maybe, you might say, more traditional and less open to Western influence, let's say. And, well, they used to... You couldn't walk on the sidewalks because everybody parked on the sidewalks, and they still sort of do that when they can. But so you'd be walking in the street, and there would be a car coming for you, and instead of slowing down or trying to go around you, they would speed up and they would like drive really close to you to try to frighten you, like make you jump off the road. That was
just for the heck of it, just for
as far as I know, it was just for the heck of it. But it could have been because I represented Western powers and all the horrors that the Western powers have committed or worldwide. It could have been because of that. I don't know. But that was pretty typical, and there have been times when friends of mine have been beaten, well, not beaten literally, but like, let's just say punched in the street because they were speaking loud English. I was once at a bar fight which was located not too far from here. It's just a few blocks in that direction. where that was in the mid 90s or late 90s, and it was one of the few places where they used to have live music here in Sofia. They didn't have bars. I mean, there were bars, but it was hard to find a nightclub sort of where they'd have like live music or theme nights or whatever. So back then there was this place called Eddie's Bar and Grill. It's very famous to anybody who was here back then. They'll know about it, but Eddie's Bar and Grill. And there used to be like the petty mafia guys, but by then the mafia was not so petty. It was already pretty much running the country by the end of the 90s. Maybe that was the middle of the 90s, I'm not sure. But yeah, I saw a bar fight, and it was just pretty much like what you would expect to see in sort of those Western films where people were clearing the tables. Everybody was trying to get out of the way, basically, because there was a beating going on right in the middle of the restaurant. So yeah, I mean, lots of things like that. And of course, you know, there's no mention of any police because the police weren't doing anything at that time. They were just letting the mafia guys run amok. So those are some of the interesting highlights, let's say, from the chaos of the 90s.
So back then, what did this street, Vitushka, look like?
Well, perhaps it certainly didn't look like this. It was only, I don't even remember when it became a pedestrian zone, but I think it was maybe less than 10 years ago. So before it used to have a tram line running up and down it. There were these bars, of course, were all pulled back because there wasn't room on the street. Yeah, there are cars going up and down the street as well. But when I first arrived in '91, and I've told this story many times, but it was absolutely, there were no lights. Well, there were lights, but they didn't work. Street lights.
Was this a central street at the time?
This has always been the central street in Sofia. But yeah, I mean, it didn't have any lights. Nothing had been renovated. The buildings looked horrible. They hadn't been renovated probably or painted since 1945 or something of the sort. So, and all of the shops. This part of it is because of the sots. That's the socialism. Capitalism, not capitalism, excuse me, communism, socialism here. I guess you could say a lot of it was because of that, but back then, like all of the stores on Vitusha, you would walk into the stores, none of them were well lit, of course, it was just like outside, so it was dark, drab, dirty. All of the goods, all of the products were lined up in shelves behind shelves. I mean, you couldn't touch them, you couldn't see them, you had to ask somebody to give you had to say like, I need that alarm clock, and sort of like point, and they would go and get it. Well, and then they would write you a check, and you had to go to the cashier, you pay for it, you bring the receipt back, and then they give you the alarm clock. But it was like, you know, it was very non-consumer friendly, if you could put it that way, but just very dark and dirty. Actually, my first impression, and you have to remember this was back in the 80s and 90s, so I had been to China and I had been to Thailand at that time. But when I showed up here on Vitusha Boulevard, my first thought was, this looks like Lebanon. It was like a war-torn area. That's the way it looked to me, a war zone. Just so dark and dirty. I mean, nothing had been kept up. Trash everywhere, of course. No trash cans anywhere. Those are new fixtures here in Bulgaria. And so on and so forth. You can put the rest together. Of course, nobody had nice clothes back then, so everybody was dressed in these like Soviet sort of. It wasn't fashion. You couldn't really call it fashion. Everybody looked like your great grandmother.
Even the the girls?
Of course, everybody. I mean, their mothers would make their own dresses and stuff, and so they would use whatever little material they could find, fabric, and so there wasn't very much on the market. Let's put it that way.
So now, when you take a look at this pedestrian street that's all lit up, that has people walking up and down it with the latest fashion and the latest stores and all these bars and restaurants, and I'll give you a glimpse of some of it. So what do you make of what it has become?
Well, it looks much nicer, and people are much happier and much less. They don't start conflicts as much. They're not as belligerent as they used to be. They feel more like Europeans. I mean, because when I first arrived, they used to say, we're not really Europeans. We're Easterners. When they say Easterners, they mean like Turks. So they, until they became part of the European Union and were allowed to travel freely among the European countries, they really had sort of a low self-esteem, sort of an inferiority complex, and after that, that's really changed. So the fact that things look good, and the fact that people feel like they are European, all of this is good. But I also worry a little bit because I know that a lot of this, what we see around us, all of these nice benches and those nicely paved streets and all of this is possible because of the European Union and the European funds that they're getting. And it's kind of, maybe, I wonder what's going to happen to their self-esteem when they stop getting the Euro funds and they don't provide this for themselves. I think then it's going to go back a little bit. But so I worry about what happens when the Euro funds stop. Not because I'm pro-European.
We'll be discussing the EU plenty in the future. But what do you think about Bulgarian culture? Is Bulgarian culture fading as Sofia and at least Vitushka is looking so much
This is
more
a very
European?
interesting question to me, Josh, because I could say that the way that we Americans think of culture, of course, our country is less, it's a little over 200 years old, and so a lot of Europeans sort of laugh when we say culture, American culture, because they're like, you guys don't really have a culture. If anything, we're a melting pot, and I agree with that. But back when I first arrived, and I think this is a communist policy, so maybe there was not, I don't know if it's a good idea to try to enforce such things, but I know back then people were very proud of their culture, very proud of their folklore music, which is mystical. Their opera singers, their theater, etc. They're very proud of these things. But of course that has changed. I mean, that's sort of the globalization effect, and I think that we see this worldwide where a lot of, let's say, specificities that make cultures unique are beginning to disappear. And of course, nowadays kids are much more interested in going to eat at McDonald's than they are about learning how to make banitsa or some other traditional dish or something like that. So and the music too, of course, the folklore music it's been overshadowed by what is sort of like our American country music in a sense. It's like a
Are you talking about chalga?
Nationalized folk music, which is chalga.
Perverted. To me, it resembles more of our hip hop culture, or rap culture than it does.
It took
country
on a lot
music.
of that, and interestingly enough, because a lot of Chalga fans are huge rap fans, and so it's sort of the same sort of lifestyle, like bling and showing off and driving around in nice cars and wearing the nice clothes, nice brands, stuff like that. So there is something similar there, but yeah, Chalga has been around for at least 15 years. Some people would probably say 20 or longer. Back then it was called turbo folk. That was the Serbian version, turbo folk. And it's sort of overshadowed folk music, so it's hard. People, I don't really think that they say like they don't really like folk music, because if they say that, other people will think that they like Chalga or something. So there are aspects of the culture that are dying, and the language is it's a very flexible language like English, so it's pulling in a lot of foreign words, especially from English, over the last 25 years. And so there have been, I've heard predictions that the Bulgarian language would disappear by, let's say, 2100, let's say, like within 80 years or 90 years. And that may be true, because if it just keeps on taking in English, sooner or later it's not going to really resemble the Bulgarian that it was 20 years ago.
Well, there's also the factor that the population is shrinking so much.
Yeah, and lots of the young people are going abroad, and so almost everybody, well, they also learn English now. They start learning English in first grade, as far as I know. So, but yeah, they're going abroad. I mean, that's always been sort of a Bulgarian ambition, was to send their children abroad so that then they could get well-paid jobs that they could send some money back to their family. But yeah, it's shrinking, and the minorities are becoming a greater percentage of the population. So I guess we're seeing the demographics, I mean, what they've been talking about for a long time, at least 100 years, about cultures fading away, languages fading away, even nations. In this case, you might, I don't know, I think Bulgaria will still exist. And I like to think that there are some good old-fashioned Bulgarians in the villages that will hold on longer and that will resist the change. Because every culture, even though it has positive and negative aspects, even those negative aspects somehow add to the charm of the culture. So I hope that there are some pockets of resistance, to globalization within Bulgaria and in other countries as well.
And after all of these years here, and now at the age of 50, are you still happy here, and will you still be sticking around?
I'm becoming happier and happier, but that's because, look, I learned a long time ago, Josh, and you need to know this. They say you cannot run from your problems, and that's true. So maybe when I was 24 and I left America, I may have been running from some of my problems that I learned later that I could not run from. Basically what I'm saying is that happiness comes from inside, and if you're able to control your own mental state and emotional state, then you can be happy anywhere. So that's why I'm becoming happier, not because it's becoming more Western. I actually I liked it because it was untouched, and now it's not as unique as it used to be, and I still like it, but it's mostly I'm learning how to be happy with who I am and with my situation. So here we
Right
are.
as you have something profound to say.
He's a homeless man who's trying to put on a show like a lot of the other street entertainers.
Well, our show is about to wrap up. But you did just make a very interesting remark, as I was saying, fairly profound remark. And thank you for that.
Which
advice
remark was that?
About learning to be happy with your situation and making the most of it.
Those are just life hacks that it takes. I mean, our parents are supposed to teach us that. Sometimes they don't succeed. Our teachers, I don't know. Our society, I don't know. But in the end, it's mostly us individuals who have to find happiness for ourselves and define it for ourselves. But also, just. It's about learning to accept ourselves, really, and others. If you can accept yourself, then you can accept others. And I think that's where true happiness comes from. So
I'm trying to do some of that myself, accepting myself, and there'll be more videos to come, more podcasts, even some vlogs where I will at least be getting into that. And on that note, this has been fun. Thank you, Brent, for sharing the wisdom that you've accumulated over the decades in your life and here in Bulgaria. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for watching this edition of the FreeManCast. So long and farewell.
ciao.
Ciao.